President Cyril Ramaphosa said to be hosting his Ukrainian counterpart today. The president spoke to Russia's Vladimir Putin earlier this week. South Africa, of course, has been pushing for a peaceful resolution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. This issue, we understand, will be discussed by the two presidents at the Union buildings today. Let's get you more on the reaction from Moscow now. Bring in SABC News correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, who joins us now via our video link. And Dasha, it's lovely to see you. So yesterday, we saw Donald Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance saying that the U.S. will essentially stop its efforts to try bring these warring sides to the table if there's no agreement over Crimea. Help us firstly place that within the context of this visit from Volodymyr Zelensky to South Africa.
Well, definitely in Moscow, the American efforts to try and negotiate settlement of the Ukrainian conflicts in the coming time, it has been very much welcome. Moscow does note a very different approach of the new American administration. They repeatedly say that they welcome that, they cherish the efforts that have been placed forward by the American administration. But at the same time, Moscow maintains that any of the details of a possible arrangement on ceasefire and the wider settlement of this conflict, they should not be made public. They insist those should be very discreet negotiations, while Moscow is also saying that it is maintaining the context that it has been having with the American administration. Now, we understand that later this week, on Thursday, Friday, the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is expected in the Russian capital for talks with the high-ranking Russian officials, including the Russian President Vladimir Putin. That will be yet another meeting between the two held in Russia, as this diplomacy by the United States has geared up over the course of the past weeks. And obviously, the expectation is that the parties worldwide, internationally, including South Africa, would be able to also help and bridge the differences that still exist between the parties. Moscow says there are many nuances. The positions should be narrowed. It is not an easy negotiation that they are holding, but at the same time, they welcome any peace effort that has been placed forward by the international parties that are interested also in this conflict to come to an end.
Yeah, I mean, there's now questions, of course, around whether or not Ukraine may very well tone down its demands given their reliance on the United States. And I wonder whether or not there's any of that kind of anticipation from Moscow.
Well, as Moscow has suggested, is that Russia's concerns, national interests, have to be addressed in any way or those negotiations are taking. And Moscow has been saying that it is indeed very difficult to deal with the Ukrainian side. However, Moscow itself has also been hinting that it is not willing to make any sort of concessions. They have been talking about territories, which Moscow now considers as its own, that Moscow is not going to revise this issue. And undoubtedly, Moscow has been saying that the NATO membership of Ukraine should be completely ruled out. The statements that we have been getting earlier do suggest that this is no longer an option, and Moscow welcomes this, saying that is in line. But at the same time, Moscow is now saying that the withdrawal of the Ukrainian troops from the territories of Donbas has to come first, and this has certainly become another demand from the Russian side. So definitely those are the negotiations that are ongoing. Ukraine could be changing its position, but at the same time we know that those are not easy negotiations. There are many obstacles, there are many differences.
Of course, in the background, we understand that the war has continued. In fact, the BBC reporting that there were overnight attacks on Ukraine's capital, Kiev, a total of about 48 missiles and 64 drones that were fired, we're told, from Russia. What's the sense you're getting around the very latest from the front lines and whether or not this war is actually intensifying, ironically?
Well, we do know that the operation is ongoing, and Moscow has said that it will be ongoing until there is the security deal reached. And without this negotiated settlement being put forward, signed, the operation will continue militarily. So we know that Russia has also come under the Ukrainian attack. Russia is yet to comment on its own overnight attacks against Ukraine. But what Moscow says it is doing, it is destroying the military targets in Ukraine that has always been the position of Moscow, although Ukraine might say differently. We know that there have been advances by the Russian army in the Donbas region, in the Donetsk region. There have been more settlements coming under the Russian control, Tarasovka most recently, Sukhaya Balka the day before. And Moscow insists that it does hold the upper hand on the battlefield. And as one of the Russian security officials, Sergei Shoigu, has pointed out, the situation on the ground, on the battlefield, will be detrimental for the negotiations.